Hello, everyone, and welcome to Practice English TV. I'm Mark, and we're really happy you're here with us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Emma. Thanks for joining us wherever you're listening from.
Today's episode is about something many English learners experience, feeling like they're not making progress even after studying for a long time.
Yeah, like listening to podcasts and still missing a lot, needing subtitles for videos, or wondering if all that practice is actually helping.
And we'll share some real experiences, small everyday moments, and the surprising ways English can improve little by little over time.
And if you've ever felt frustrated because your progress seemed too slow, you're definitely not alone.
And if you enjoy learning English with us, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with another English learner.
Thank you so much for being here today. Let's begin and talk about learning English little by little together.
So today we're talking about something that a lot of English learners experience, but not everyone talks about. It's that feeling of working hard and still feeling stuck.
Yeah, you study, you listen, you read a little, maybe you practice every day. And then after a few weeks, you think, wait, am I actually improving?
Exactly. And the frustrating part is that the answer is often yes, but the improvement is so small that you can't see it.
I think that's one of the hardest parts of learning a language. If you go to the gym, maybe you can see physical changes. If you learn to cook, maybe your food tastes better. But with English, progress can feel invisible for a long time.
That's true. Sometimes you spend an entire month listening to podcasts and reading articles, and at the end of the month you still feel like your English is the same.
Then one day you listen to an old podcast that used to feel difficult, and suddenly you understand much more of it.
I had that experience with videos. A few years ago, I needed subtitles for everything.
Everything?
Pretty much. If there were no subtitles, I felt lost after a minute or two.
I know that feeling.
And what's funny is that I didn't notice myself improving. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and understood English perfectly.
It happened little by little.
Exactly. One day I realized I had watched half a video before noticing the subtitles weren't turned on.
That's actually a big moment.
Yeah, but at the time it felt small. I almost ignored it.
I think many learners do that. They focus on what they still can't understand instead of what they can understand now.
That's a great point. Let's imagine a simple situation. Someone starts learning English today.
At first, they might only understand a few words in a podcast.
Then, after a few months, maybe they understand 30%.
But instead of celebrating that progress, they think, I still don't understand 70%.
Exactly. Their attention goes to the missing part.
Here's another situation. Someone writes a short message in English.
Maybe it takes them 15 minutes.
A year later, the same message takes only 2 minutes.
But because the change happened gradually, they hardly notice it.
I remember spending so much time writing simple emails. I would write one sentence, check a dictionary, rewrite it, then check it again.
Same. Sometimes one email felt like a school project.
Exactly. And now I can write similar emails much faster, but I rarely stop to think about that improvement.
That's what makes language learning interesting. The biggest changes often happen quietly.
And when you finally notice them, you realize you've come much farther than you thought.
It may not feel dramatic from day to day, but those small steps are always adding up.
And that realization can be surprisingly encouraging.
You know what's interesting? Some of the biggest moments in language learning happen when you're not even trying to measure your progress.
That's so true. Sometimes you're just going through your normal routine, and then suddenly you notice something has changed.
I remember a period when I listened to English podcasts every morning on my way to work.
How long was your commute?
About 30 minutes. Not very long, but long enough to listen to one episode.
That sounds like a good habit.
Well, at first it didn't feel very useful. Honestly, there were days when I understood very little.
Really?
Yeah, I would hear familiar words here and there, but entire sections would go by and I'd have no idea what they were talking about.
I think a lot of learners can relate to that.
I remember one podcast I liked because the hosts were funny, but I probably understood only half of what they said.
That's an interesting way to listen to a podcast.
Really, it was. I spent a lot of time guessing what was happening.
But you kept listening.
Yeah, not because I was super motivated every day, it just became part of my routine.
And then what happened?
A few months later, I noticed I was following the conversations much more easily. Not perfectly, but better.
That's the kind of progress people often miss.
Exactly. There wasn't one magical day when everything suddenly became clear.
It was hundreds of small improvements happening in the background.
Right.
I had a similar experience with YouTube videos.
Oh, really?
Every evening, I would watch videos in English before going to bed. At first, I depended completely on subtitles.
Same here.
And if the subtitles weren't available, I usually clicked away and found another video.
I definitely did that too.
Then one night, I realized I had watched almost 10 minutes without looking at the subtitles very much.
That's a great feeling.
It surprised me because I hadn't noticed the improvement happening.
Sometimes the progress is easier to see when you stop paying attention to it.
That's true.
Here's a situation that many learners experience. You open an English learning app and complete a lesson.
The next day, you do another lesson.
Then another one.
After a few weeks, you feel like nothing is changing.
But if you compare your results to when you first started, there might be a huge difference.
The problem is that most people compare themselves to where they want to be, not where they used to be.
That's such an important point.
I also remember feeling nervous about speaking English.
Me too.
Even simple conversations felt stressful. Before speaking, I would think about every word.
I used to rehearse sentences in my head before saying them.
I still do that sometimes.
Honestly, so do I.
One day, I was talking to someone in English, and halfway through the conversation, I realized I wasn't translating everything from my native language anymore.
That's a big milestone.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that nobody else noticed. It was a completely ordinary conversation.
But for you, it meant a lot.
Exactly. It felt like proof that all those small daily efforts were actually working.
And I think that's what many learners need to hear. Progress doesn't always look impressive in the moment.
Sometimes it's hidden inside ordinary days, ordinary conversations, and ordinary routines.
And then one day you look back and realize those ordinary moments changed you much more than you expected. I was thinking about this the other day. One reason people struggle to notice progress is because language learning isn't always easy to measure.
Yeah, it's not like counting steps or tracking how many miles you run. English is different.
Sometimes your improvement shows up in very small ways.
Like understanding one extra sentence in a podcast.
Or recognizing a word that used to seem completely unfamiliar.
Exactly. Those moments can seem tiny, but they matter.
Let's talk about a few things that often change little by little over time.
Listening is probably one of the biggest ones.
I agree. At the beginning, English can sound very fast.
Sometimes it feels like native speakers are saying one very long word instead of a sentence.
That's true. You know the words individually, but when people speak naturally, everything blends together.
Then, after enough listening, your brain slowly starts separating the sounds.
Here's a simple situation. Imagine someone listening to a podcast during their morning commute.
At first, they understand only a few key words.
A few months later, they start catching complete ideas.
Not every sentence, but enough to follow the conversation.
That's real progress.
Another thing that changes is vocabulary.
Definitely.
When you're new to English, it feels like every article contains 20 words you've never seen before.
Sometimes even more than 20.
Then something interesting happens. The same words begin appearing again and again.
You stop learning them from flashcards and start recognizing them naturally.
And eventually, you don't need to translate them anymore.
I remember reading short articles online years ago.
How was that experience?
Slow. Very slow. I kept opening a dictionary every few minutes.
I did the same thing.
Now I still find unfamiliar words sometimes, but not nearly as often.
That's a good example of gradual improvement.
Here's another situation. Someone writes comments in English online.
At first, they spend a lot of time checking grammar and spelling.
They rewrite the same sentence several times.
Then, months later, they type much more naturally.
The words come faster.
And they spend less time worrying about every small mistake.
Speaking changes in a similar way.
Yeah, confidence often grows before people even realize it.
Many learners think confidence comes after perfect English.
But usually it happens the other way.
You have lots of small conversations.
You make mistakes.
You survive those mistakes.
And eventually, speaking doesn't feel as scary.
I remember joining a short online conversation years ago.
Were you nervous?
Very nervous. Before speaking, I planned almost every sentence in my head.
That sounds familiar.
The conversation lasted maybe 10 minutes, but it felt much longer.
And now?
Now, I still make mistakes sometimes, but I don't panic when it happens.
That's an important difference.
Exactly. Progress isn't only about knowing more words.
It's also about feeling more comfortable using the English you already know.
And that's why language learning can be difficult to evaluate.
Because many improvements happen quietly in the background.
A little more understanding, a little more confidence, a little faster response time.
Each change may seem small by itself.
But together, they create something much bigger than we realize. Here's something a lot of people experience. They spend months learning English, but when someone asks, "How's your English now?" they don't really know how to answer.
Yeah, because progress doesn't always feel obvious. Most days feel pretty normal.
Exactly. Let's imagine a regular weekday. You wake up, get ready for work, and put on a podcast while you're commuting.
A year ago, maybe you listened mostly because you wanted practice.
Right. You understood some parts, missed other parts, and hoped that eventually things would improve.
Now, imagine listening to a similar podcast today.
You still don't understand every word.
You still aren't understanding every word, but you're following the main ideas much more easily.
You catch jokes faster.
You recognize expressions you've heard before.
And sometimes you even predict what the speaker is about to say.
That's actually a really interesting sign of progress.
It is, but because it happens gradually, many learners don't notice it.
I had a moment like that recently.
What happened?
I was watching a video in English one evening. Halfway through, I realized I hadn't looked at the subtitles for several minutes.
That's great.
The funny thing is that I wasn't trying to practice. I was just enjoying the video.
Sometimes those are the best moments.
Yeah, it felt natural.
I remember something similar. Years ago, when I watched videos in English, I would pause constantly.
To look up words?
Exactly. Every few minutes.
That can get exhausting.
It really can. Sometimes a 10-minute video took 30 minutes to finish.
I think many learners have done that.
I think so.
And now?
Now I still encounter new words sometimes, but I don't stop every time. Usually I can understand the meaning from the context.
That's a huge difference.
It is, but it happened so slowly that I barely noticed.
Let's think about another situation.
Okay?
Imagine someone needs to send a short message in English for work.
That's something many people deal with.
A few years ago, they might spend 10 minutes writing 3 sentences.
First, they write the message.
Then they check the grammar.
Then they rewrite it.
Then they check it again.
And maybe one more time just to be safe.
That sounds very familiar.
It does.
But eventually, those same messages become easier.
You start trusting yourself more.
The words come faster.
And you're less afraid of making small mistakes.
That's something people don't talk about enough.
What do you mean?
Many learners think progress means becoming perfect.
Yeah.
But sometimes progress means feeling comfortable even when you're not perfect.
I completely agree.
For example, I remember being nervous whenever I had to speak English.
Even in simple conversations?
Especially in simple conversations, I worried about every little mistake.
I used to do that too.
I'd start speaking, then stop, then change my sentence halfway through.
And sometimes that makes you even more nervous.
Exactly.
What changed?
Honestly, nothing dramatic. I just had more conversations over time.
Little by little.
Yeah, Some conversations were good, some were awkward, some were very short.
But each one helped.
Eventually, I realized that most people weren't judging my English nearly as much as I thought.
That's an important realization.
It really is.
I think another challenge is motivation.
Definitely.
There are periods when learning feels exciting.
And there are periods when it feels slow.
Sometimes you study for weeks and wonder if it's making any difference.
I've had those moments.
Me too.
Then, months later, you suddenly notice you're understanding more than before.
Or you respond faster in a conversation.
Or you read an article that would have seemed impossible a year ago.
Those moments can be surprising.
Because the improvement was happening the whole time, even when you couldn't see it.
That's probably my favorite thing about language learning.
What's that?
The fact that small efforts keep working in the background.
Even on days when it doesn't feel like much is happening.
Exactly. One podcast, one video, one article, one conversation.
None of them seem very important by themselves.
But together, they slowly build something much bigger. Let's start with something simple. Have you ever gone back and looked at something you wrote in English a long time ago?
Actually, yes. I found some old notes on my phone a few weeks ago.
Really? What were they?
Just short journal entries and a few messages I had saved for practice. Nothing special.
And what did you think when you read them?
Honestly, I was surprised. Not because they were terrible, but because I could clearly see how much effort every sentence required.
That's interesting.
Back then, I was translating almost everything in my head. I could feel it while reading those old messages.
I know exactly what you mean.
Now I still think about grammar sometimes, but it feels much more natural.
That's one of those changes that happen very quietly.
Yeah, nobody notices it except you.
Here's a situation that happens to many learners.
You're reading a short article online.
A year ago, maybe you stopped every few sentences to check a dictionary.
Now, you still find unfamiliar words, but you can often keep reading, because you understand enough of the overall meaning.
Exactly. That's a skill people sometimes overlook.
Another thing I've noticed is how vocabulary starts sticking in your memory more easily.
Oh, that's a good one.
When I first started learning seriously, I felt like I was forgetting words every day.
Same here.
I'd learn a word on Monday and forget it by Wednesday.
Sometimes by Tuesday.
Honestly, yes.
But after seeing the same words many times in podcasts, videos, and articles, they start becoming familiar.
You stop trying so hard to memorize them.
And eventually, they just become part of your vocabulary.
I think that's one reason people underestimate their progress.
Because they only notice the words they don't know.
Exactly. They forget about the hundreds of words they already understand automatically.
I experienced something similar at work.
What happened?
There was a meeting where part of the discussion was in English.
That sounds stressful.
A few years earlier, it would have been stressful.
But not this time?
Not really. I wasn't understanding every single word, but I was following the conversation without too much effort.
That's a great feeling.
The strange thing was that I didn't realize it until after the meeting ended.
You were too busy participating.
Exactly.
Those moments can be powerful because they happen naturally.
They do.
Here's another situation that many learners will recognize. You're listening to a podcast while walking, driving, or commuting to work.
At first, you're concentrating very hard just to understand a few parts.
Months later, you're listening more naturally. You still miss some things, but you're following the conversation much more easily.
And maybe you don't even realize how much you've improved.
Until you remember how difficult that same podcast would have felt a year earlier.
That's why looking back can be so important.
Not to compare yourself with other people.
But to compare yourself with your past self.
I like that.
Me too, because your past self is the best evidence of how far you've come.
And honestly, most learners have made more progress than they think.
I believe that too.
Even if the progress feels slow.
Even if there were weeks when motivation disappeared.
even if there were days when learning English felt frustrating.
All those small efforts still mattered.
Every podcast,
Every video,
every article,
every conversation.
every time you tried, even when you weren't sure it was helping.
Because little by little, those experiences started building something stronger.
And eventually, they became the English you have today.
Before we go, we'd love to hear from you.
Think back to your English learning journey.
What's something that feels easier for you now than it did 6 months or a year ago?
Maybe it's listening.
Maybe it's reading.
Maybe it's writing messages or speaking with other people.
Whatever it is, take a moment to recognize that progress.
And if you'd like, you can write your answers in English in the comments.
That's a great way to practice and connect with other learners.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
We hope this conversation reminded you that progress doesn't always have to be dramatic to be meaningful.
Sometimes the biggest changes come from the smallest steps.
Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep moving forward one day at a time.
Take care, and we'll see you in the next episode.